December 11, 2024. The FIFA Congress gathered in virtual session. Delegates from 211 member associations cast their votes. The result was unanimous. Not a single objection. Not a single abstention. Saudi Arabia would host the 2034 FIFA World Cup. The announcement was, in many ways, a formality. Saudi Arabia had been the only candidate. The bidding process had been compressed into a timeline so aggressive that no rival nation could mount a credible alternative. Australia had considered bidding. Indonesia explored the possibility, then stepped back. The path was cleared. The outcome determined before the vote was cast. In Riyadh, the news was greeted with celebration. Fireworks erupted over the capital, painting the night sky in green and white. Digital displays on skyscrapers flashed congratulations in Arabic and English. The Kingdom Center, the city's most iconic tower, was illuminated with projections of footballs and trophy silhouettes. Officials spoke of a historic moment, a new chapter, a chance to showcase the kingdom to the world. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman called it the realization of a dream. A dream not just for football, but for a nation seeking to redefine itself on the global stage. The World Cup was more than a sporting event. It was validation. It was arrival. It was proof that Saudi Arabia could stand among the world's great hosts. Across the Gulf, in Qatar, there was a different kind of recognition. They had walked this path before. They knew what was coming. The stadiums, the infrastructure, the global attention, and the questions. The questions that never stop. The questions about workers, about rights, about the cost of spectacle measured in human terms. The 2022 World Cup in Qatar had been the most scrutinized sporting event in history. Every construction site examined, every worker death counted or disputed. Every labor practice debated in parliaments, newspapers, and social media feeds around the world. The tournament had been magnificent on the field and controversial off it. Now the spotlight would shift westward, to a kingdom even more complex, even more scrutinized, even more determined to control its narrative. Saudi Arabia had watched, learned, and prepared. They had a decade to build, a decade to answer the questions before they were asked. A decade to construct not just stadiums, but a story about what those stadiums meant. The question is whether a narrative can be built as Sicily, as concrete, and whether the world will accept it when it is finished. Let us begin with numbers. The 2034 World Cup will require 15 stadiums across 5 host cities: Riyadh, Jeddah, Al-Khobar, Aba, and Niam. Some venues already exist in partial form. Most do not. The new constructions will be among the largest sporting venues ever built, designed to accommodate crowds of 80,000 or more in a climate where outdoor gatherings are dangerous for significant portions of the year. The projected cost exceeds $60 billion. This figure is almost certainly an underestimate. Mega projects of this scale invariably exceed their budgets. Optimism bias, unforeseen complications, scope creep, inflation. The forces that drive costs upward are relentless and predictable. Qatar's World Cup was initially projected at $10 billion. The final costs approached $220 billion when all infrastructure was included. Russia 2018 exceeded its estimates. Brazil 2014 exceeded its estimates. The pattern is consistent. Saudi Arabia's plans are more ambitious still. The stadiums themselves are architectural spectacles, each designed to make a statement. Climate-controlled environments, capable of maintaining comfortable temperatures, while the desert sun beats down at 50 degrees outside. Retractable roofs engineered to open during pleasant weather and close when conditions turn hostile. Advanced cooling systems that chill not just enclosed spaces but open-air seating areas, pushing air through thousands of vents concealed beneath seats. Sustainable energy integration promising that these massive structures will run on solar and wind power. Each venue is designed not just to function but to astonish. Beyond the stadiums, the infrastructure requirements are staggering. Transportation networks must connect venues across a country larger than Western Europe. A high-speed rail line is planned to link major cities. Roads must be widened, airports expanded, transit systems built from scratch in cities that have never had them. The logistics of moving millions of fans between cities, between experiences, require planning on a scale that few nations have ever attempted. Hotels to accommodate millions of visitors must be constructed in a nation that has only recently opened to tourism. Saudi Arabia had virtually no tourism industry a decade ago. Now it must create one capable of hosting the world's largest sporting event. The numbers required hundreds of thousands of rooms, each meeting international standards, represent a hospitality build-out unprecedented in speed and scale. Training facilities for 32 national teams, fan zones in every host city, broadcast centers capable of transmitting to billions, security installations protecting against threats, both known and unknown, medical facilities prepared for heat-related emergencies, the entire apparatus of a modern World Cup, constructed in a region where much of it does not yet exist. This is not construction. This is transformation. An entire country reshaped to host 32 teams for 1 month of football. The ambition is genuine. The resources are available. The will is absolute. But ambition has costs that are not measured in real. The 2034 World Cup will be held in November and December. This scheduling is not arbitrary. It is not a preference. It is the only possible choice. A summer World Cup in Saudi Arabia would be not just uncomfortable but potentially fatal. The kingdom experiences some of the highest temperatures recorded on Earth. In Riyadh, summer highs routinely exceed 50 degrees Celsius. In some regions, temperatures have reached 53, 54 degrees. Numbers that test the limits of human survival. At these temperatures, the human body cannot cool itself effectively. Sweat evaporates instantly but cannot carry heat away fast enough. Core temperature rises. Organs begin to fail. Even healthy adults, resting in shade with unlimited water, face serious risk. Athletes competing at peak intensity would face worse. The winter months are survivable. Temperatures in November average between 20 and 30 degrees in most host cities. Cool by Gulf standards. Pleasant, even. The nights can be genuinely cold, dropping 2 single digits in the desert interior. The football will be possible. The spectators will be comfortable. The players will perform. But the construction cannot wait for winter. The stadiums must be built now. In the years leading up to 2034, the workers who build them must work through summers where temperatures routinely exceed 50 degrees, where heat stroke is not a theoretical risk, but a daily management challenge, where the human body reaches its physiological limits simply by being outdoors at the wrong hour. The biology is unforgiving. When ambient temperature exceeds skin temperature, the body gains heat instead of losing it. When humidity is high, sweat cannot evaporate efficiently. When physical labor generates metabolic heat that must be dissipated, and the environment refuses to accept it, the body's cooling systems fail. Heat exhaustion begins with fatigue, nausea, dizziness. Heat stroke follows. Confusion, collapse, organ damage. Without immediate cooling, death can come within hours, sometimes within minutes. Saudi Arabia has implemented heat work bans. Outdoor labor is prohibited between noon and 3 in the afternoon during summer months. Workers must have access to shade, water, cooling facilities. Rest breaks are mandated. Violations are theoretically punishable by fines, by contract termination, by exclusion from future projects. But timelines are unforgiving. A World Cup cannot be postponed because construction fell behind schedule. The date is fixed. The world is watching. Every delay in one phase compresses the next. The pressure to complete on time creates incentives that push against worker safety. This is not speculation. This is the documented experience of every Gulf megaproject. When deadlines approach, corners are cut. Supervisors look away when workers continue past banned hours. Rest breaks shorten. Safety equipment becomes optional. The abstract risk of violation weighs less than the immediate pressure of the schedule. When prestige is at stake, human costs are minimized in the calculations. When the world is watching the finished product, no one asks about the process that produced it. When the cameras focus on gleaming stadiums, they do not pan to the dormitories where exhausted men sleep for hours before returning to the site. The climate equation is simple and brutal. The stadiums will be air-conditioned marvels. The spectators will be comfortable in their seats. The players will perform in controlled environments that maintain ideal temperatures regardless of outside conditions. The workers who built those environments will have done so in conditions that no spectator will ever experience and no camera will ever record. This is the arithmetic of climate and construction. The product is engineered for comfort. The process is endured in extremity. The stadiums planned for 2034 are not merely functional. They are designed to astonish, to overwhelm, to assert Saudi Arabia's place among the world's great builders. In Riyadh, a new national stadium will rise with capacity for 92,000 spectators. Its design evokes traditional Arabian architecture, geometric patterns, soaring arches, references to tents, and desert landscapes, while deploying the most advanced climate control technology ever installed in a sporting venue. The roof will open and close in minutes, responding to weather conditions that can shift rapidly in the desert. When temperatures are mild, spectators will watch under open sky. When the sun grows harsh or sandstorms threaten, the roof will seal, creating an enclosed environment maintained at perfect comfort regardless of chaos outside. Beneath the seats, thousands of vents will pump cooled air upward, creating a microclimate zone that envelops each spectator. The technology has been tested in Qatar, proven feasible, and will be expanded here to even larger scale. In Jeddah, a coastal stadium will incorporate views of the Red Sea. The design celebrates water in a region defined by its absence, creating an experience that links sport to environment in ways other venues cannot match. Spectators will watch matches with the sea visible beyond the pitch, sunset colors painting the water as evening games unfold. In Niam, the futuristic city that exists more in renderings than reality, a venue will be constructed that defies conventional understanding of what stadiums can be. The plans suggest integration with the linear city concept, a stadium that is not separate from urban fabric, but embedded within it, accessible by transit systems that do not yet exist, serving communities that have not yet been built. In Abuha, in the mountains of the southwest, a high-altitude stadium will offer temperatures naturally cooler than the desert lowlands. Here, the climate assists rather than opposes, and the design can focus on spectacle rather than survival. Each design is a message. The message is, we can do what others cannot. We can build in the desert what temperate nations build in mild climates. We can control nature itself, bending heat and sand to our will, through technology and resources that few nations can match. This is architecture as propaganda, not in the crude sense of political messaging, but in the deeper sense of demonstrating capacity, projecting power, asserting presence on the global stage. The stadiums are not really for football. Football is the occasion, not the purpose. They are for the cameras that will broadcast 2 billions. They are for the journalists who will describe them in superlatives. They are for the history books that will record what Saudi Arabia achieved. The architectural ambition is genuine and impressive. Saudi Arabia has hired the world's leading firms. The budgets are virtually unlimited. The briefs encourage boldness, innovation, statements that will be remembered. But spectacle requires an audience that does not look too closely. The cooling systems that will keep spectators comfortable consume enormous energy. The carbon footprint of maintaining artificial winter inside stadiums during desert summer is significant, regardless of what power source runs the systems. The materials that will construct these monuments, the steel, the concrete, the glass, the aluminum, must be manufactured, transported, installed. Each step carries environmental costs. Each stage involves workers whose conditions merit examination. The land on which these stadiums will stand must be cleared, prepared, transformed. Whatever existed before, desert ecosystem, informal settlement, agricultural land, will be erased. The spectacular replaces the ordinary. The monumental displaces the everyday. The stadiums will be magnificent. The question is what we choose not to see in order to appreciate them. Every World Cup host promises legacy. The word appears in every bid document, every press conference, every justification for the billions spent. The stadiums will not sit empty after the final whistle. The infrastructure will serve future generations. The investment will pay dividends for decades to come. The nation will be transformed, not just for 1 month, but forever. These promises are rarely kept. Brazil's 2014 World Cup left a trail of underutilized stadiums, several now falling into disrepair. The Arena Amazonia in Manaus, built in a city with no top-flight football team, hosts occasional matches to sparse crowds. The maintenance costs exceed the revenue. The structure becomes burden rather than benefit. South Africa's 2010 venue struggles similarly. The Moses Mabhida Stadia in Durban, spectacular in design, cannot fill its seats for domestic matches. The economics of operating a 60,000-seat venue for events that draw 20,000 do not work. The legacy becomes a liability. Russia built lavishly for 2018. Some venues have found purpose. Others sit waiting for events that never come. Monuments to a month of glory and years of quiet decline. The pattern is consistent. The promises are similar. The outcomes disappoint. Saudi Arabia's situation is different. The kingdom is investing in sports as a long-term strategy, not a one-time spectacle. The Public Investment Fund owns football clubs in England, in France, in leagues across Europe. The Saudi Pro League is spending billions, not millions, billions, to attract global stars. Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Karim Benzema. Names that draw attention, that signal intent, that transform a domestic league into international entertainment. Golf, boxing, tennis, Formula One. The calendar fills with events that would have been unimaginable a decade ago. The kingdom has positioned itself as the destination for global sport, the host that will pay what others cannot, the stage that welcomes what others reject. The 2034 World Cup is not an isolated project. It is part of a broader transformation. The stadiums may actually be used. The Saudi Pro League may grow to fill them. International events may rotate through them. Tourism may develop to the point where visitors come specifically to see these architectural marvels, even without matches to attend. The infrastructure may actually serve future needs. The transportation networks built for fans will carry citizens. The hotels built for visitors will house business travelers. The airports expanded for 1 month will operate for decades. The investment may actually generate returns. Unlike Brazil, unlike South Africa, Saudi Arabia has the resources to maintain what it builds, the strategy to utilize what it creates, the patience to wait for economics to align. But legacy means different things to different people. For officials, legacy is economic development, international recognition, diversification away from oil dependency. These are legitimate goals, measurable outcomes, strategic achievements. For citizens, legacy might be recreational facilities, national pride, memories of a historic moment. A child who attends a World Cup match may carry that memory for life. A nation that hosts successfully earns a place in sporting history. For workers, legacy is whatever they can send home, whatever they can save from wages that are higher than home but lower than promised, whatever they can show for years spent away from everything they love. And for those who die building legacy projects, there is no legacy at all. Only absence. Only the gap where a person used to be. Only the families who must construct their own futures without the fathers and sons who went to the Gulf and did not return. A child in Nepal grows up without a father. That is not legacy. That is cost. A widow in Bangladesh raises children alone. That is not legacy. That is consequence. A village loses its young men, one by one, to recruitment drives that promise prosperity and deliver risk. That is not legacy. That is extraction. The economics of legacy rarely account for these costs. They do not appear on balance sheets. They do not factor into return on investment calculations. They are externalities, economists' language for consequences that someone else bears. The benefits accrue here. The costs accrue elsewhere. The ledger balances only if you ignore what is not written. The stadiums will stand for generations. The question is whether we will remember what they cost. The 2034 World Cup will be broadcast to billions. Every match analyzed, every goal replayed, every moment dissected by commentators in dozens of languages. The production values will be extraordinary. Saudi Arabia will ensure that the coverage will be comprehensive. FIFA will demand that the world will watch. Because the world always watches. Because football is the global game. Because the World Cup is the planet's largest shared experience. But what will the world choose to see? In 2022, the Qatar World Cup generated unprecedented scrutiny. Human rights organizations mobilized years in advance. Amnesty International published reports. Human Rights Watch documented conditions. Journalists investigated construction sites, interviewed workers, counted deaths. Activists pressured sponsors, demanding they acknowledge the cost of their association. Coca-Cola, Adidas, these are the names that wrap around every World Cup. faced questions they preferred not to answer. Broadcasters were asked whether they could celebrate sport built on exploitation. Football associations faced pressure from their own constituents. Some players wore armbands with messages of protest. Some captains made statements. Some federations considered, however briefly, whether participation itself was complicity. The conversation around the tournament was never only about football. Some of this pressure produced change. Qatar accelerated reforms that might otherwise have taken decades. The scrutiny created political costs for inaction. International attention made domestic policy an international concern. The pressure, for all its imperfections and its inconsistencies, achieved something. But the scrutiny also demonstrated limits. The World Cup proceeded. The sponsors stayed. The broadcasters broadcast. The fans watched. For 1 month, the spectacle overwhelmed the critique. The goals and the drama and the human stories of competition displaced the other human stories. The ones about the people who built the stages, but never appeared on them. The opening match drew billions of viewers. Vite final de Labour controversy had faded to background noise. Argentina won. Messi lifted the trophy. The world celebrated. The workers who made it possible were already gone. Saudi Arabia has learned from this. The kingdom has invested heavily in public relations, in sports presentation, in the management of international perception. Communication strategies are sophisticated. Media access is controlled. The narrative is managed with the same precision that manages other aspects of Saudi public life. Critics call it sports washing. The use of athletic events to launder reputation, to distract from human rights concerns, to project an image that obscures inconvenient realities. The term has gained currency because it captures something real. The strategic deployment of sport for purposes beyond sport. Supporters call it modernization, opening, transformation. They point to genuine changes in Saudi society. Women driving, cinemas opening, concerts happening, restrictions easing. The country is different than it was a decade ago, and sport is part of that difference. The truth is probably both and neither. Saudi Arabia is changing. It is also using sport to manage how that change is perceived. The two are not contradictory. They are complementary. The events provide occasions for showcasing progress. The progress provides justification for the events. But some things have not changed. The workers who build the stadiums will still come from poor countries. They will still leave families behind. They will still labor in conditions that would be unacceptable in the countries that send fans to watch. The power imbalances that enable exploitation will still exist. The economic pressures that drive migration will still push men toward risks they cannot fully assess. The gap between policy and practice will still provide space for harm. The world will watch, as it always does, with attention spans calibrated to the length of a highlight reel. The workers who build the stadiums will not appear in highlight reels. Their stories will be told, if they are told at all, in documentaries that most people will never watch, in reports that most people will never read, in statistics that most people will never examine. The watching world sees what it wants to see, and what it wants to see is football. 10 years from now, the 2034 World Cup will be history. The matches will have been played. The champions will have been crowned. The stadiums will stand in the Saudi desert, monuments to ambition and engineering and the power of spectacle. The broadcast archives will preserve the goals, the saves, the moments of brilliance that define tournaments in memory. What else will remain? Perhaps genuine progress. Perhaps reforms that outlast the tournament. Protections that become permanent. A labor environment measurably better than what existed before. Qatar's World Cup, for all its controversies, did produce changes. Laws were amended. Systems were reformed. The pressure of global attention can be a force for improvement. Saudi Arabia may follow the same path. The scrutiny of the world, the conditions attached to contracts, the reputational stakes of hosting, all of these create incentives for genuine reform. A decade is long enough to transform systems. If the will exists, perhaps the workers of 2034 will be safer than the workers of 2022. Perhaps the deaths will be fewer. Perhaps the families left behind will be fewer. Perhaps the grief accumulated in villages across Asia and Africa will be lighter than it might otherwise have been. Perhaps Or perhaps unfinished reckonings, perhaps deaths that are never accurately counted, categories that obscure rather than reveal, statistics that satisfy without informing, perhaps families that are never adequately compensated, whose losses are calculated in formulae that cannot capture what was lost, perhaps stories that are never properly told, voices that never reach the microphones, truths that remain local while narratives go global. The gap between promise and reality may persist, papered over by the passage of time and the fading of attention. The scrutiny that peaks during the tournament will fade after it. The journalists will move on. The human rights organizations will focus elsewhere. The world's attention, so briefly concentrated, will scatter, and the workers who survive will go home, or to the next project, or to whatever comes next in lives shaped by necessity rather than choice. Perhaps both outcomes. Perhaps progress and persistence, reform and repetition, change and continuity intertwined in ways that resist simple summary. The truth about megaprojects is that they contain multitudes. They are engines of development and sites of exploitation. They create opportunities and foreclose them. They build futures for some on the labor of others. They are genuinely impressive achievements and genuinely troubling processes. They are both at once, and they're both matters. The 2034 World Cup will be no different. It'll be a celebration of sport and a testament to what human beings can build when resources are unlimited. It will showcase football at its finest, athleticism at its peak, competition at its most dramatic. Nations will unite behind their teams. Strangers will celebrate together. The beautiful game will demonstrate, once again, its power to transcend. It will also be the product of thousands of workers whose names will never appear in any ceremony, whose contributions will never be acknowledged in any speech, whose presence will be erased the moment construction ends and spectacle begins. They will build the stage and then exit it, returning to lives that the cameras never follow. We will watch the football because football is beautiful. We will cheer for our teams because that is what nations do. We will appreciate the stadiums because they will be genuinely impressive, feats of engineering that push the boundaries of what architecture can achieve. And perhaps, if we choose, we will also remember that every seat in every stadium was installed by someone. Every beam was welded by someone. Every tile was laid by someone. Every surface was polished by someone whose name we will never know and whose face we will never see. That the spectacular is always built on the invisible. That the celebrated always stands on the uncounted. That the monuments we admire were not conjured but constructed. Not willed into being but labored into existence. The cost of stadiums is not measured only in billions. It is measured in years away from home. In health broken by heat and labor. In lives cut short by accidents that could have been prevented. By conditions that could have been improved. By choices that valued speed over safety. In grief that no compensation can answer. No statistic can capture. No ceremony can acknowledge. The beautiful game is coming to Saudi Arabia. The world will watch. The goals will be scored. The trophy will be lifted. And somewhere, in a village far from the cameras, a family will watch on a television boat with money sent from the Gulf. They will see the stadium and wonder if their father, their son, their brother helped build it. They will never know for certain. His name is not on any plaque. His face is not in any photograph. It was Terry, and then he was not, and the stadium remains. The question is not whether we will watch. The question is what we will allow ourselves to see.